Welcome back to MTG Budget Magic. Today we're going to take a look at a pretty sweet budget option. A lot of you may have already heard about this. For those of you that have not, we have Mono Blue Tempo. So again, going back to our good old favorite MTG Goldfish, which breaks down the top rated decks by metagame percentage in any particular format. Looking at standard, looks like Mono Red Aggro, Boros Angels, Grixis Control, Esper Control are the top four, and the 10th listed deck in the format right now is Mono Blue Tempo. Let's take a quick look. So this is a deck that is just a whole big giant pile of commons and uncommons. The only rares in the list are Tempest Djinn, and some lists run Warkite Marauders, some lists don't even bother with that. Some lists only have Tempest Djinn as the only rare. So right now on paper it's a $50 deck. A little while ago it was only 30 bucks. It's sort of bounced up. The deck is just so cheap and so many people have been picking it up that these Siren Storm Tamers have been bouncing up in price in paper, along with Curious Obsessions actually going up in price. They've gotten a little bit pricey now as well. So if you have some, I don't know, some Ixalan and Rivals of Ixalan that you drafted, and you've got some commons and uncommons in a box somewhere, you might actually want to pull out your Curious Obsessions and your Siren Storm Tamers and throw those in your trade binder and yeah, cash in. Anyway, for those of you interested in the deck, you can actually build this on Magic Online for only 11 tickets, which is kind of insane. Normally you'll see like Saffron Olive do some budget decks that really are not top tier. This is basically probably like tier 1.5, and it's super cheap. And when you build it for 11 tickets, you're not really building a janky budget version of a deck, you're building the best version of the deck. So anyway, basically this is a tempo deck. You're going to take advantage of some counter spells. You've got Essence Scatter and Wizard's Retort. You're also going to have Chart of Course, a couple of copies. These are pretty nice. You're doing a lot of attacking, so it's 2 mana, draw 2 cards is kind of doing it. Spell Pierce, I have mixed feelings about this. I think I'd rather run 1 Spell Pierce and 3 Dive Downs or something like that, but anyway, 2 Spell Pierce and 2 Dive Down. You just want some cheap solutions. Dive Down gives your creature +0/+3 and hexproof. So this is just good for saving any kind of a situation where they're trying to blow up your creatures. Basically, you want to get a creature out, stick a Curious Obsession on a creature that has some kind of evasion, ideally. A Curious Obsession gives your creature +1/+1, and whenever they deal combat damage, you get to draw a card. Don't forget this last line of text, which can cause you some grief, which is at the beginning of your end step. If you didn't attack with a creature this turn, sacrifice Curious Obsession. So basically, once you stick the Curious Obsession, you got to keep swinging in every turn, because if you stop, you will lose your Curious Obsession. Anyway, you just take Curious Obsession, jam it on one of your little threats, and just start going to the dome. So one cute line of play is to drop a Mist Cloaked Herald on turn 1, 1 mana 1/1 that just simply cannot be blocked. Turn 2, you stick a Curious Obsession and hit your second mana drop, and you have Dive Down backup, and you're pretty much doing it. Untap and hit your third land drop and have, say, Wizard's Retort counterspell backup, and you are seriously doing it. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Just a tempo deck that really revolves around Curious Obsession. Tempest Djinn can also just be a nasty beater if you are able to hit your land drops. A 3 mana 4/4, 5/4, 6/4 is no joke. Exclusion Mage is okay. This is a card that I've seen included or not included. Again, this is a tempo deck, so having a 3 mana 2/2 that bounces your opponent's creature works out pretty well. Warkite Marauder, I don't know. It's okay. It does good stuff. Sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes it's just kind of meh. Night Veil Sprite is quite good when you manage slaying Curious Obsession on it, because you're getting to both surveil and then draw a card, which is kind of ridiculous. And then Merfolk Trickster is good just because, again, we're talking about a tempo deck. 2 mana 2/2 you can flash into play, so that's nice if you're holding up counter magic. End of your opponent's turn, still stick a creature, and when it comes into play you get to tap an opponent's creature, which is nice for tempo plays. Or if you're in some weird spot where maybe earlier in the game you, for some reason, had to play your Curious Obsession on an Exclusion Mage, So you can use Merfolk Trickster to tap down your opponent's creature they were going to use to block to make sure you're still jamming damage through. Siren Stormtamer is super cool. 1 mana, 1/1 flyer. You can pay a blue, sacrifice it to counter target spell or ability that targets you or a creature you control. So Siren Stormtamer is another way to protect whatever creature you have out with Curious Obsession. Yeah, it's just very, very versatile creature that can counterspell a whole lot of different things that would ruin your day. The only thing it can't really stop are most sweepers, but it can counterspell Settle the Wreckage, which is kind of cool. And yeah, so it's just basically, again, play a creature and stick Curious Obsession with some kind of protection for your creature. You're off to the races. So the interesting thing about this deck is you can build it on Magic Online and just jump in there and start playing Standard and having some fun. Or you can build it on MTG Arena. If you're going to build it on Arena, you don't need to worry about the sideboard that much, really. But if you're going to build it on Magic Online, then you probably should. And so Sentinel Totem, Syncopate, Diamond Mare, Disdainful Stroke, Negate, and Sleep are all the cards that they're running. I don't know how I feel about Sentinel Totem. It's just basically there to exile all graveyards. I feel like with a tempo deck, if the game's going so long that your opponent's graveyard is becoming a problem for you, you're probably not winning anyway. But the rest of the sideboard options I think are pretty legit. Anyway, 21 Islands seems about right. And yeah, that's the deck. One of the things I'll point out, in addition to this deck being really cheap, it's also really nice for Magic Online, because one of the things that can be really hard is getting enough mythics or rares to put a deck together. And you don't want to burn up all your mythic and rare wild cards on some experimental thing like this. But because there's only 4 rares and no mythics in the whole deck, if you say drop the Warkite Marauders and replace those with extra copies of Dive Down or whatever, more Night Veil Sprites, whatever, then you can basically build a pretty functional deck with just 4 rares. And that's not bad. You don't have to worry so much about your common and uncommon wild cards. And if you do just a smidge of grinding and get some of the free pre-con decks, you'll get a handful of the commons and uncommons, so that when you go to actually round out the deck, you won't have to burn a bajillion wild cards either. So the caveats I'll give for anybody who's actually going to try out this budget deck for both MTG Arena and Magic Online is that if you're the kind of person who really doesn't like playing mirror matches, you might want to stay away from it, because this is an easy to throw together deck and is actually pretty decent. There are a boatload of people playing it, so that's A. B, because there's so many people jamming this because it's so cheap, it's probably a little overrated in the metagame in terms of how good the deck actually is, so maybe it's not even tier 1.5, maybe it's tier 2. Number 3, because this deck is being played a disproportionate amount because it's so cheap, there's probably going to be extra, main deck and sideboard hate that the savvy players are going to start basically gunning for this deck because of the fact that it shows up more than it probably should because it is so cheap. So you will have certain things stacked against you. If you enjoy playing mirror matches and you can live with the fact that there's going to be a little extra hate coming your way just because the deck is probably played more than it should be, then by all means jump in on this. And as far as MTG Arena goes, I think it's definitely worth burning the 4 rare mythics, or I'm sorry, the 4 rare wild cards on the Tempest Shins, just because to actually have a good functional deck that you can play right now, and I think this deck will last you for, who knows, at least 3 months and maybe for the next year. That is a great value, and just the time it'll save you when you're grinding to be able to get your wins in at a more reasonable pace more consistently by having something that's actually decent will probably be worth it. I don't know if I would actually hop into the constructed events or competitive constructed events on MTG Arena or not, but hey, it's a free to play game, so if you want to experiment a little bit and have a little fun with that, by all means go for it. Anyway, this is definitely the best budget option out there right now for MTG Arena and Magic Online. And as far as paper goes, even though the price is listed at $50, which is already a pretty cheap price, a lot of the cards you would play in this deck you probably already have or could get some of your friends to hook you up for free. Just by way of a quick example, when you look at something like Essence Scatter, So this is listed at 15 cents, but it's more like a free card because you probably have these, or you'll find somebody that'll hook you up with these. And there's a lot of cards in this deck that are basically like that. The Nightville sprites are going to be all over the place with people drafting. If you just show up where people are drafting, you can probably get some of these for free. And Exclusion Mage is in the same boat. I mean, the only thing you're actually going to have to actually really seriously spend money on are probably the Siren Storm Tamers and the Curious Obsessions. Most of the other stuff you should be able to get close to free, maybe as throw-ins on trades and stuff like that. So the deck is really more like a $30 deck than a $50 deck, and if you happen to already have some Curious Obsessions and Siren Storm Tamers laying around, then the deck just starts getting absurdly cheap. So yeah, whether you're playing paper, online, or or Arena, this is just a great option all around. I don't normally cover a lot of budget decks because I don't like recommending a deck to someone that is not really a fully optimized version of a deck. I just don't like doing that. I want to make sure that any deck I'm talking about is at least arguably an optimum version of that deck. While I think budget is important, I don't ever want to sacrifice an optimum deck construction just for budget reasons. So it's pretty rare that I find something like this that you can actually do in standard. And for that reason, I just wanted to put it on everybody's radar, just in case anybody hasn't heard about it yet or thought about all the different implications for where you could play it. Anyway, I guess the last tip slash advice I'll leave you with is this. If you aren't already on MTG Arena, you should probably hop on it just because it's kind of fun to be able to get a free draft in, once every week or once every 2 weeks. Draft can be really expensive on MTGO. You could end up spending, just doing the same amount of drafts on Magic Online as on Arena could probably cost you $30 or $40 a month, which is quite a bit. So that's a pretty good value to get for free. And as long as you are hopping on MTG Arena to do some drafts, you might as well have a go-to deck. And I think that you can put this deck together, again, for free without really sinking any money in, and start playing it and see how it feels. If the deck feels good on MTG Arena, again, you still haven't spent any money on this deck, then you could go ahead and start picking up the paper cards and trying it out at your local game shop, even if you haven't played Paper Magic in a long time. Whatever the situation, or if you haven't played Standard in a long time, or you haven't gone to your LGS in a long time, once you get some experience with the digital version of the deck, if it looks like it's actually solid, it might be a nice entry point into playing physical cards again, or just playing Standard again if you haven't messed with it in a while and you think it might be fun. And yeah, so basically you can try this out for free on Arena if it looks like it's actually a thing. You could expand your horizons at that point into Paper Magic or Magic Online, depending on what your taste is. Anyway, that's all for today. I hope if you do pick up this deck, I hope it helps you maybe pick up a few tickets online or a little store credit at your local game shop. Or if nothing else, if you weren't aware that Siren Storm Tamer and Curious Obsession were popping, maybe hopefully you're able to go pull those out of your bulk and cash those in. However, whatever the case may be, I hope you're making extra tickets, pulling down extra credits, and we'll catch you next time on MTG Budget Magic. Peace!